Right. Hi, David. This guy is David Levine.
That guy's Michele Boldrini.
Hey, nice seeing you, man.
Good to see you, man.
All right.
We're going to talk today about synthetic controls.
I just decided that I want to hear your opinion about synthetic control because the macro guys have discovered synthetic control and they're writing crap.
So it's good. It's good to have an example, right? So, you know, in 1940, about a bunch of people left the country of Denmark. And we'd like to know.
Where did they go?
I don't know where they went. But the question, that wasn't the question. The question is, I want to know if they left because the Nazis arrived. Now, how do we tell? How can we tell whether they left? Maybe they would have left anyway. Maybe it had nothing to do with the Nazis, right?
Right.
So the idea, the idea of
so in the language, the Nazi are the treatment.
The Nazis are the treatment.
They are the policy.
So what we have to do is we have to find out some other countries just exactly like Denmark. It wasn't invaded by the Nazis, and see if people left there too. And maybe they left because it was a bad winter or something like that. So you got to find what you want to find is a control country. It's got to be like Denmark, right? Because maybe if you chose,
it has to be like Denmark, so at least until 1940.
So if you found, if your country was the Philippines and they left because of a bad winter in Denmark, well, maybe there wasn't such a bad winter in the Philippines, right? So the idea is you got to find a country that looks like Denmark, but maybe no country looks exactly like Denmark. But maybe
I'm the one that interrupts in this conversation. I'll do it with David too. What he means, a country looks like Denmark, he means before the Nazi arrived and after the Nazi arrived.
If they hadn't arrived.
If they have not arrived.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Philippines might not be such a great comparison.
Not a good comparison.
So, so then
warm
you say,
weather, far away,
but maybe Sweden would be a good place to compare.
Kind of nearby.
They weren't invaded by the Nazis.
Somewhat similar, Scandinavian.
Exactly, right?
Value system, more or less the same.
So this is good. If you come up with a country, if you got kind of you got Denmark, you got a good Sweden, you're in good shape. But sometimes nothing's exactly right. So maybe Sweden is not perfect. Maybe
we're not paying attention.
You need to do a little bit of Sweden. Maybe you need a bit of Finland in there too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some mixture of Sweden and Finland's a little bit more like Denmark than Sweden is, right? So that's the idea of synthetic
and a little bit of Netherlands, maybe. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, the Netherlands, mix and match.
Yeah, the Netherlands got invaded, but that was
they
later,
got the Nazi too.
But anyway, that was a year later, so maybe that was.
Well, the Finnish had the Russian nearby, so
anyway. But you see the thing. Nobody's exactly right. But you think maybe if I get three guys that aren't exactly right, maybe we can kind of combine them in a way that was a lot.
Then it becomes even more difficult to make sure that they're really equal to Denmark in every other respect, apart from the Nazi.
True. Right. But the big thing is, of course, so the way this is the idea of synthetic controls. You take a mixture of these different countries and you say, okay, this looks a lot like Denmark.
Exactly.
Right. Now, the problem with this is it's kind of an empirical exercise. There's a tendency for people to say, let the data speak for itself. So you take the Philippines and Japan and Australia, a bunch of other countries that weren't invaded by the Nazis. And you say, which mixture of, the Philippines and Australia and Japan looks the most like Denmark by certain criteria, per capita income, this and this and this. So where's the problem is if it's all winners, you picked a bunch of summer countries, they might look a lot like Denmark and per capita income and this and that. But of course, if it turned out it wasn't the Nazis, but it was a cold winter that they all left, you'd miss that, right? So there's a common sense, I don't know exactly how to say it. You can't just let the data speak. You have to have an idea of countries being similar that goes beyond simply measurement.
And in particular, you cannot let the only piece of data you're looking at speak, which is in the example that stimulated my conversation with you. If I want to see the effects, say, of some general European policy like the euro, the common market on the GNP of a bunch of countries, I have to ask which other policies may affect the GNP of this or the other country.
So there's two halves. Do
I have a model of the GNP?
Right. No, there's two halves of this. So how could synthetic controls go wrong? We can create this artificial country. We have the real country, and we compare them. They're the same until something happens. The euro's introduced, the Nazis invade, whatever it is, and then we observe them growing apart.
Right.
And we like to say the reason they grow apart was because of the thing that happened.
Right.
Now, there's two other. It could be the particular thing, the euro, or it could have been something else that happened in Europe at the same time as the euro.
More or less.
Because it's a whole year, a lot of things could have happened. But of course, it could have been something that happened in the other countries as well that causes them to grow apart.
So you had a good idea before when we were chatting for coffee.
So it could be, for example, it's a big financial crisis in Asia at about the same time that the euro was introduced. And the reason it's different isn't because the euro had any effect, it's because the financial crisis had effect on these Asian countries that are being used as synthetic controls. So there's two things.
Some big change of policy.
There's two things to say about this. One of these is a need for a certain amount of rigor in choosing the dates. So, for example, if you say the introduction of the euro, and you say, well, it's really anticipation of the euro that matters, and you say, well, there's like 10 years, you know, first, and I'm going to pick the one that works, then you probably found the Asian financial crisis, right? Because if you let the data pick the year, you don't know whether it's picking the year or the euro because you have 10 years, and you got to pick the one that's really the euro. All kind of things happen. Yeah, so if you start picking your dates, if you give yourself leeway in dates, then you wind up with nothing. Now, the other thing is there is a way, and I don't know if I have to look more into this literature where people do this, but it's a useful kind of thing. So suppose we're dealing with the euro. So the European countries that joined the euro, and maybe our controls are a bunch of Asian countries that are kind of similar to European countries, Japan and Taiwan and South Korea, not North Korea, probably, Australia,
well,
right?
North Korea may help to get with a little percentage those that are not growing, right? You need that too.
That too. Anyway, so you get you say, okay, Italy joined the euro, right? And that's some mix of Japan and the Philippines, probably with a lot of weight on the Philippines, right? Germany joined the euro, and that's a mixture of Japan and the Philippines, and that might have a lot of weight on Japan. There you go. So, you get those weights, and that's all very good. And you see things growing apart. And you wonder, well, maybe it was something happened in Asia. Maybe it wasn't the euro. Maybe something happened in Asia, not something happened in Europe. So one thing you could do that would give you an idea about that is you could say, look, let's take the treatment to be someplace where it didn't have the euro. Let's go to Latin America. And no euros in Latin America.
No, you don't mean the treatment. You mean the control.
No, the treatment. No, the control. We're going to do the same synthetic controls as we did before. We're going to look at what's happening in these Latin American countries. And we're going to ask if this particular year, it started to diverge from Asia. So we're going to build synthetic controls for Latin. We're going to do exactly for Latin America what we did for Europe. We'll build a synthetic controls
from Asia.
So we'll get, so Argentina will be the Philippines, and Chile will be Japan, or whatever it is, right?
Something like that.
Something like that. And then we're going to look, and if the things go growing apart, then we can be pretty sure, that it wasn't the euro that had anything to do with it.
Is that clear? What it means is,
well,
you do Europe, the same thing for the Latin American countries using a control made of a mixture of Asian country. It has to be
if we
the same Asian
country,
same Asian country that are in the control for European countries. Obviously.
Yes.
And then if at the same date you see that also the Latin American countries diverge from where the control goes, you may say, well,
probably it wasn't the introduction of the euro in Latin America.
Because euro wasn't introduced in Latin America. Right. So in general, what do you think of this tendency to use? You just gave an interesting talk about natural experiment, this idea that it's widespreading, that we take the data, we take some statistical technique, and we let it tell us about causality.
So there's two things. Problems. So there's two things here. There's the good and the bad.
And the ugly.
And the ugly.
That's already sitting.
So there is the good and the bad and the ugly. So the good is it's actually good to try to disentangle causality by looking at things that are relatively random. And they do a good job of this. So that's the good. The bad is that you can't interpret what they do. They seem to think then they've found something atheoretical that has meaning. And the problem is, if it's atheoretical, it never has any meaning. So we find if you bomb people, they become mean to you or something like that. That was one I was talking about today. So you bomb people and they're not your friends. So we do, we compare guys that got bombed, guys that didn't get bombed, kind of randomly put in the two things. You see the guys that got bombed, they don't like you very much, right? So the question is, that doesn't actually tell you what you want to know, because there's different reasons why people might act badly towards you after the bomb. One is that they might hate you. That'd be pretty logical. But another thing is maybe they decide there's no point, they were placating you, trying to make you happy, and you bombed them anyway, right? So maybe they just say, what the heck? It's not friendly with you
because you mistreat them no matter what. But he has a model. He has a model of behavior.
But the thing is, these have different implications, because one day, the war's over, the bombing stops, and people hate you. They still hate you, right? But if they concluded there's no point in doing something for you, that doesn't make any difference whether you bomb them or not. They go doing the same thing. So you reached the wrong conclusion about what was going to happen after the war ended if it was because of one effect rather than the other effect, and yet the the data says the same thing. You need a theory to disentangle that. And if you have a theory to disentangle that, it tells you other things to look at. So you say, well, if I want to know which is which, I look at this other thing, right?
But you see, the point that the technique of synthetic control, if I'm not erroneous, comes from a statistical effort to help people that had trouble to do the actual control, the non-synthetic, which is very typical in medical experiments, right?
Yeah.
And it's typically done on very minor, not in the sense of not important, but very precise detail treatment. And for diseases or behavior for which there is a very reasonable theory. And
so
this is,
let's not be
carefully what
let's be clear.
What.
Let's be clear. It is often the case in economics as well. So there's the good.
You don't have a good theory of GMP.
No, but very few natural experiments, not very many natural experiments were conducted with GNP, so maybe that's why.
Right.
But the point is there's the good, right, which is it's actually good to try to get data that answers the questions you're interested in, not a bunch of data. I spent a lot of time as a graduate student writing computer programs that were used by the MIT students writing empirical theses. And they always had these really complicated theoretical models with lots of bells and whistles.
But they did not have data.
And then they would come to me and they'd run this, this nonlinear regression program. They come to me and say, David, it won't converge. It just keeps going and going and going, but it never goes anywhere. And I say, yeah, there's a reason for that. It's because you don't have any data, right? Yeah. So, getting good data is a good thing. And, if you look at the people, that criticize natural experiments, Heckman or somebody like that, he makes exactly the complaint that we're making here. But, he's not opposed to it either because he also understands that getting good data is important. So the good is this is
how you use them.
The good here is it does push people in the direction of getting data that reveals the sorts of things that need to be revealed. It's not data, any old data. You want data where there's some action that tells you the answer to the question you want. Natural experiment literally pushes you in the direction of looking for data like that. That's good. The bad is you need a theory to disentangle it. A lot of people don't realize that. And the ugly is people just go out and do it without thinking. That's just ugly. But, it's not hardly endemic to natural experiments. I could find,
not at all.
I can find a few theory papers.
I can find a lot of papers doing that. I can find lots of papers doing that. But that's another topic for our next conversation. Because, I'm becoming so negative about the way that the profession is going and our standards and our thinking about it that I tend to see the ugly most of the time. David is a more optimistic character, so having him around can push you up. So maybe if he likes the way he came out on this one, smile, that's your public, right? Next time when he's back, wherever he is around the world, we'll try to do this with the usual 2 windows.
All right.
Is that okay?
I love 2 windows.
So smile, you're on YouTube, Professor Levine.
3 windows is even better.
Well, we need a 3rd guy. Whom do you want? We can get Drew.
We put the Brexit cat in the 3rd window.
We put the what?
Brexit cat. I won't be able to make us mine whether it's coming.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.